Cassio Tagge was originally born into the wealthy and powerful Tagge family of Tepasi. The Tagge dynasty was also known as a noble and wealthy family that owned the Tagge Corporation, which owned mining facilities on Lukaszek and even owned entire planets. Anyone who mixed with the elite of Coruscant was well acquainted with the Tagge family. At the beginning of the Galactic Empire's formation, Tagge had been appointed as an officer with the Imperial Army and swiftly rose to the rank of general. Tagge was a methodical and analytical officer who concentrated his efforts on the activities and expansion of the Imperial fleet. He was among only a few high-ranking Imperials who took the fledgling rebellion as a serious threat to the Empire. During this time, Tagge was instrumental in focusing the minds of the Joint Chiefs and the Imperial Ruling Council on a series of alarming insurgent attacks on Imperial vessels and assets, including operations of the Tagge Corporation. The general brought about a rapid end to the insurgent attacks and was rewarded for his efforts. In 0 BBY, Tagge was elevated to the rank of High General and held the position of Chief of the Imperial Army as part of the Joint Chiefs. Aboard the Death Star, his contempt for centering Imperial policy around the Empire's new superweapon was all too obvious. He was the only officer who dared to vocalise his opposition to Tarkin and Vader and his closest rival Admiral Antonio Motti. When Tagge learned the Emperor had disbanded the Imperial Senate, he expressed his concern for how the Emperor would maintain order. Tarkin informed the Joint Chiefs that the regional governors, otherwise known as the title of Moff, would be placed in control of their territories. Disturbed by the thought of this change which could affect the Tagge Corporation, he continued to voice his concerns that the rebellion could pose a very serious threat to the Death Star if the stolen plans expose a weakness to exploit. But his rival caused the biggest upset by challenging Lord Vader about his failure to locate the stolen plans, which antagonized Vader into force-choking him. After witnessing Vader's display of power, Tagge glanced to the vacant chair 2 down from his, which previously belonged to Director Krennic, and met his eyes with Motti. Between Tarkin and Vader, Krennic had suffered the ultimate price for challenging them both. After the captured Princess Leia claimed to Tarkin a rebel base was active on Dantooine, Tagge left the Death Star to lead an investigation but uncovered the base had been abandoned for some time and reported his findings to the Major General Seward Cass. After the Battle of Yavin and the Death Star's destruction by the rebels, Emperor Palpatine commended Tagge for recognising the rebel threat to the Death Star, and Tagge was subsequently promoted to the rank of Grand General and given the title of Supreme Commander of the Imperial Armed Forces, which would now be governed by his philosophy as the second Death Star was constructed. For his failure to protect the Death Star, Vader was placed under Tagge's command, and they began to work alongside each other to identify the source of the increased pirate raids on the Empire's shipping. They were in agreement that the spy was supplying information on Imperial shipping, but Tagge was satisfied the level of attacks was tolerable but expected due to the loss of the Death Star. From his superstar destroyer, the Annihilator, the Grand General's handling of Imperial forces was more focused on performance and expansion. In contrast to the late Tarkin's grand vision for the Empire, calling it Tarkin's folly, Tagge believed under his command the Imperial forces possessed the power to crush any form of resistance through its sheer size and firepower. Tagge became overconfident with his newfound authority, and to the annoyance of Vader he assigned Lieutenant Annoy to be Vader's adjutant. But Vader knew it was so the lieutenant could report back to the Grand General. Sending Vader on a mission to raid a pirate space station to recover valuable Imperial information, Vader successfully completed the mission and then killed Lieutenant Annoy, making it look like Annoy had been a spy to the Grand General. Sometime later, Tagge was assigned to oversee the Imperial expansion of the Outer Rim. The Grand General focused the efforts of the Imperial forces on bringing unconstrained criminal elements under the Empire's jurisdiction, which had previously been allowed to operate with freedom. Only the Hutt's criminal operations were allowed exemption from Imperial restrictions in exchange for a new formed alliance with the Empire. To remove an underworld criminal competitor to the Hutts, Tagge sent Vader to successfully destroy the Sun Tool Pride and notably acquired a large hoard of credits which were immediately transferred into Imperial vaults. Tagge continued to be condescending towards Vader despite having seen Vader's power. The Grand General even arrogantly and mistakenly believed he could use Vader as his own personal weapon, and once again assigned him with a new adjutant, Inspector Thanoth. However, the Grand General's poor judgment was too trusting as a part humanoid, part cybernetic doctor called Silo, who reported personally to Tagge, but eventually took the decision to betray the Empire during the Shu-Torun War. Lord Vader successfully ended the Shu-Torun War and also defeated Silo, which forced Emperor Palpatine to reassess the Grand General's position. Despite Tagge's successful analytics, His poor judgment in the Silo affair ultimately ensured the Emperor demoted him and placed him under the command of Vader. Having faced humiliation, he remained determined to survive in Vader's service. Tagge attempted to convince the Dark Lord he could still remain useful to him. However, Vader force-choked Tagge to death in front of a shocked Admiral Ozzel.